Hi. Hello. It's good to see you. I'm Addie from Whimsy of Things, and this video is my currently inked pens for October and November. It was originally just supposed to be an October currently inked video, but I got very wrapped up with some Halloween costume sewing and my free time completely evaporated. But you may see references to October. Just add November on there for me. I'll be inking 18 pens this month, and I'll do a brief review at the end. I do not have a review of the previous month's pens in this video because I decided to split those out into its own video. That's where I'm going to go over the previous month's inks, so you're not going to see that in this video. A little bit different, changing things up a little bit, separating them out. The hope was to reduce the size of the video, but because I had 18 pens this month, that didn't exactly happen. So skip around the timestamps if you want, and I'm going to get started. Okay, a little bit of housekeeping before we get into actually inking some pens and seeing some new ink. There are a few changes this month that I want to go over real quick. The pen right here, this Jaipur version 2 Flex pen. This is a pen I use with my planner to do most of the basic writing that isn't related to tasks that I have in there that are specific to different categories. So it's what I write down, I don't know, notes. I use this pen. This pen I probably use the most. I always keep gray ink in this pen, and I've been flipping around between different gray inks. I really like this Dominant Industry Downpour. That's one that I've used a lot. I also really like to use Kirisami, but this is discontinued. But I do have 2 bottles. So this is quite expensive. This one's discontinued. And another gray ink that I've used a good bit is, I put Earl Grey in it a bunch, but this is a little darker than what I like to use normally. I've decided that the Pannonia Verhorfelu, which I'm not pronouncing right, I'm sure, Stormcloud, this is my favorite gray ink right now. And it's a decent price and it shades very well. And I just really like it. So I am going to turn this pen into a permanently inked pen. So I won't be talking about this pen in future currently inked videos because it's going to have the same ink in it. It's a permanently inked pen. So I will take this out. We're not going to be talking about that pen anymore. And then the other housekeeping thing I want to talk about is these 2 pens because they take a while to go through. I'm going to take them out of the regular rotation. I'm not going to talk about them every month. I will have them be like a special guest star at the end of inking on those months where I actually go through the whole ink. So we're not going to talk about these every month. I am left then with 3 pens that got carried over from last month out of 24 minus 3, 21 pens. So I went through the ink in 18 pens, which is a good bit. The other changes I want to make, this is not really a change, but these 2 pens currently are in the hospital. So I am not going to try to fix them before this month's currently inked. They're going to sit to the side and I will work on them. This has a piston problem and this has a crack somewhere. I have to figure out where or how. It's not sealing right, and when I fill it, the ink comes out. I thought it may be the ink that I used in it last month, but that doesn't seem to be the case. So these 2 pens will most likely come back at some point, but for now they are in the hospital. I did decide that I missed my art pen, and so I have inked this pen for this month. I'm glad I did that. I'll talk about that later. There was one more pen that I added into the rotation this month. It is a Fountain Pen Revolution Guru that I had uninked for a while that I pulled back into the rotation. So 2 pens are in the hospital and the 2 pilot parallels are going to be special guest stars down the road. And I moved 1 pen to my permanently inked collection. So there were 24 pens before. That leaves me with 21 inked pens this month. And I have these 3 left over. I will be inking 18 pens in the video coming up. The other housekeeping I want to mention is that these 3 pens went through these inks. So I went through the ink that was in them last month, plus this ink, and now they're onto a new fill. This is the Celadon Cat that I got from my family for my birthday last month, and I really like this color. It's a great grayish blue-green that has some really nice haloing and shading. It worked well in the flex pen that I had it in as far as performance, and I am excited to see what it'll look like in abroad. Don't think I'll get to that this month though. This is one of the sick pens, and so is this, actually. This Narwhal original, the double broad, worked well with this Colorverse Witch by Moonlight. This is a really pretty, but also quite shimmery ink. This is one of those that gets on everything, like really, really gets on everything. But that purplish gray with that sort of golden purple shimmer, it's really a gorgeous color. I got this off the secondhand market, so that's a beautiful one. And I wanted to try Scuttlebutt again because the last time I had used Scuttlebutt in a pen, I had it in this pen that I changed the nib on last month because it was running dry. I didn't know it was running dry at the time, so I really didn't give this ink a good try. And I've been trying to throw things at this Magna Carta to get it to not work, which sounds terrible. But every ink I put in it, it works great. So I'm like, all right, well, this one seemed dry before. Let's give it a shot. And it wrote beautifully. And it's a really pretty blue. It's a medium blue, almost a denim blue. It's a really pretty ink. Those are inks I went through that I won't necessarily be talking about extensively during this video. So I'm going to go ahead and get set up and let's get some pens going here. I'll start out with a couple fall colors. The first pen that I have inked is this Kaweco Sport in Macchiato. It has a double broad nib in it. This ink is KWZ, or I guess it's supposed to be pronounced Kavu-zet, and the color is honey. Some people say that it's scented. The company themselves say that it's the smell of the preservative. It is a slightly sweet smell. I don't find it overpowering, but I know that if I got a brand new bottle and opened it, it would probably be a stronger smell. You see it has very nice shading. This pen writes a tiny bit dry, but I don't mind so much with this ink because it does bring out the shading. So that's KWZ Honey. I do really like this brown because it leans warmer and it reminds me of toffee or something sweet. And that could be because of the name, but it's got a nice tone to it and a nice value where it's got a lot of yellow in it, but it's dark enough to be legible. It's a good fall ink. It's one of my favorite fall inks. Next pen that I'll be talking about is this Fountain Pen Revolution Himalaya version 2. This is the one that has the titanium flex nib on it that I stole from my Gravitas pocket pen that had the feed that wasn't keeping up with the nib. So it's a titanium flex. It's my only titanium flex. And the ink that I have in it this month is Diamine Ancient Copper, which is a very rich and pretty red, orange, very fall color. It's another ink that has really beautiful shading in it, and it is brown. It leans brown, red, orange, leaning brown. I don't know if you can tell from the writing. The titanium flex nib requires a little more pressure than some of my other flex nibs do, which is okay, but it's a little more effort to get the line variation in the letters. It's just such a rich color. That's another one that just really reads autumn to me. It's so reminiscent of fall leaf colors up north. It's really a gorgeous ink. Taking a look at all my pens now, I'm going to add a third ink to the first group of two that were my autumn colors. I'm going to pop in this Hongdian that was one of my birthday gifts last month that I wanted to give a try in a pen. And I put that into the art pen I pulled out of retirement because I missed it. This is my only medium nib pen, and I quite like how bouncy it is. It's not a flex pen, but it's very responsive when I write with it. So I missed it and I wanted to try this ink. So I put the coral ink in it and it does give me fall vibes. So that ink it's got some nice shading in it, which we know I like. I'm not writing particularly great tonight. It's got some nice shading even in a medium. When I think coral, it's definitely orangey. I feel like coral in my brain is lighter than this. This is getting on the verge of being a brownish color, but it still reads orange. It has shading and it is not a bright or sort of neon color. So it does feel fall leaf toned to me, or dark squash, not pumpkin orange, but it has that quality to it. I don't have any other ink that's this color, so it looks much brighter in the bottle. And it's swatching brighter too. So I'd be inclined to say that this might be one of those inks that darkens up fairly quickly in a pen, because I haven't had this ink in the pen for very long, but it's looking much darker now than it was when I first inked it. It felt a little redder, a little closer to this. So that's a possibility with this one. Like I said before, I have not tried any Hongdian inks, so I have no idea what the quality is. Writing wise, it feels fine. It doesn't feel particularly dry or overly wet. And it does, like I say, have nice shading. So yeah, I like it. I'm glad to have a bottle of it. Next set of 2 pens I'm going to talk about are here. This is a Fountain Pen Revolution. It is a Himalaya version 2. Sorry, it is an Ultra Flex nib. And this pen is Troublemaker Golden Orchid. It's an odd color. So a little dry, small amount of railroading, not bad though. Still some very pretty shading. It kind of reminds me of the antique aubergine from last month in that it is a grayish purpley pink tone. There's a little bit of a yellow undertone in there as well if you take a close look, and I wonder if that's where the golden part of the name comes from. It's an odd color. I would imagine Orchid to be more of a brighter pink, maybe, but this reminds me of fall too. It's got that dead leaf quality to it. So let's take a look at a bigger section. So it reads more pinkish in the larger swatch, but I think as this dries, we're going to see some of those brown tones too. So that is Troublemaker Golden Orchid. So I think I'm going to call this little pair of pens, since I'm pairing up my inks this month for some reason, colors that I don't really have a good way of describing. Strange colors. This first one, you can see when it's drying. This is that gold yellow I was talking about. So it's purplish gray with a yellow, which is their complementary colors. So they are straight across in the color wheel, and it's odd when they're in the same ink. In this Narwhal Ikkaku with the Regalia Cross Flex nib, which is the biggest flexing pen that I have. In this pen, and it's a shimmer, so I'm going to start doing this, is Colorverse Loki Patera, which is a ink that is pretty difficult to describe color-wise. So you can see there the kind of flex that this pen has compared to even like the other one. Just significantly wider flex. I do not believe I have enough in that sample to do a splotch test with, so I'm going to have to pull some out of the converter. So this color is interesting because it's a warm, almost chinchilla brown that has a good amount of gray in it. And it's hard to see right now, but maybe we'll see it more when it dries. There's a almost ultraviolet shimmer. It's such a strong contrast to the actual tone of the brown. This is a better representation of the shimmer that's in there. The purple is so different from the brown. It really makes it an interesting ink. I'm going to call this pairing, it might be fall, but I still like purple. And let's put some purple in some little bitty pens. So we'll start out with this Wancai with a Architect nib. This is a little tiny eyedropper fill pen. And in this pen, I have Inkeberra Pale Violet. And I used it up, so I'm going to have to steal some from the pen to do the swatch. So this pen used to be dry. Now it's quite wet. It's even more so because it's been sitting for a little bit. It's a little bit dusty. Purple, not dirty dusty, but just antique, maybe dusty, sort of vintage looking purple, lighter purple color. I know I've used this in a flux before, but it's been a while. So I don't 100% remember how much I liked it in the flux pen. I believe I remember liking it. It's definitely a violet. That is a red leaning lighter purple, which of course is what makes it violet. It does not, at least in that nib, and it does seem to be writing pretty wet. It does not have any shading. I do like the color of it. It's just not doing a lot right here, but we'll see how that goes throughout the month. The next pen is another Wancai. It also has an Architect nib on it. I put in Birmingham Pen Company's Huckleberry. If you watched my video from last month, this took last place because the pen and ink pairing that this ink was in did not work. The pen completely leaked everywhere. It was a mess. And I mentioned that I wanted to try it in an Architect or abroad to actually give this ink a fair shot. So we are trying it in an Architect. So much better than last month. And I spelled Architect wrong on the last one, didn't I? Sure did. Perfect. Let's just pretend like we didn't do that and turn this into an eye. There we go. Okay. I'm so glad I decided to try this in an Architect this month. It's got beautiful shading and it's a great blue purple color without being too dark. It's performing really well in this pen. So I'm glad I didn't just go off of how the ink was acting in the pen last month. That would have been a little tragic. This is an ink that doesn't belong in a flex pen, I would say. Even though that pen was having some problems, even counting that, I think a flex pen in general writes too wet for this ink to really show off its qualities. So I'm very glad to have it in a Architect this month. Yes, that's a beautiful color. It's got some pink in there, but it's blue. It's a blue-based purple with some pink shading. It's gorgeous. It's really great ink. Excited about that one for sure. This next set is a set of 3. And I'm going to call this set, I Just Can't Stay Away from Gray Ink. These are all three, some different gray inks. One of them's a quite blue gray. One of them's a gray that I've shown before, but I want to try something with it. And the last gray is a shimmer. So we'll start with the Fountain Pen Revolution Jaipur version 2, my blue pen, one of my 2 blue pens without a clip. It has a Ultraflex nib on it. And the ink that's in this is Van Diemen's Feline from their Feline series, Russian Blue. I would say that any railroading that you saw there was me just writing a little bit fast. It really performs pretty well. It has some very nice shading. It is a quite blue gray. So if you're not into cool grays, then this is not a good gray for you. If you like a more warm gray, this is not that. And in fact, it is almost not a gray, in my opinion. It almost is like leans towards just an extremely dusty blue, but it's leaning gray enough to include it in my 3 gray inks for this month. I did quite a nice job of capturing that color of the fur of that particular cat that they're referencing with the name. And we'll take a look at it when it dries, but this is obviously much more blue. This is a dusty blue. And this more dry reads more gray. With this Fountain Pen Revolution Himalaya version 1 with an Ultraflex nib. And the ink that's in it is Tramol Coke, which I know I've had in my currently inked videos before. However, I have not tried it in a flex pen yet, so I wanted to see how that worked. Should I take that back? I did put it in a flex pen, but it was actually this pen before I changed the nib, so it was very dry. So I wanted to give it another shot. And the other thing I wanted to check is that this ink is supposed to be waterproof. So I want to test that a little bit later just to see, because this ink has a really great shading. And if I could find a waterproof gray ink with shading for the times that I want a waterproof ink, that would be excellent. I still don't know why this is called Coke. Anyone know why this is called Coke? In any case, you can see the shading that's in there. It's very nice. This is a little darker than I tend to like my daily writer grays to be. I like them to be slightly less dark because this is almost reading as like a soft black. However, I do have another Tramol ink that's a different gray that I have not tried yet. Should do that next month. Yeah, really, really nice. Just a little bit dark. Let me do another really quick, just little writing bit of this that we can douse with some water later after it dries to check how waterproof it is. So it is a pigment ink, which is something you want to keep in mind. I don't like necessarily putting pigment inks in my very most expensive pens. Okay, this is dry. Just, whoops, spilled some water on my favorite writing I've ever done. Well, it's looking promising. It is not lifting or bleeding at all. It's not smearing. All right, let's just let it sit for a minute. So I'm noticing maybe a little color loss here. Yeah. Okay. So if I really rub it, it is coming off. It's not smearing though. So if I did, let's say I actually had an accident. I was like, oh, let me just dab this off as fast as I can. What happens? I mean, that's pretty good considering. So I guess if it were underwater, it would maybe have some of this happen. I mean, it's not all the way gone, not waterproof, but a pretty decent amount of water resistance. This is a Fountain Pen Revolution Guru with an Ultra Flex nib that I had in storage and just brought back out this month. Look at how much shimmer is in these Ferris wheel pressings. That is crazy. Anyway, in this pen is Adventurine. This was a gift at one point in time. It is a light gray base with a rose gold shimmer, and it says it has high shading. I don't know if I'd call that a light gray. In some spots, yes, but overall I would say that's more of a medium gray. Let's try to get this shimmer mixed in again and we'll do a spot test. Little bottles. I have to keep my Ferris wheel press inks in the box because they leak like crazy. You guys have that happen? I never bought any Ferris wheel press inks, but I have been gifted them, and especially the flat circle bottles leak. Put them in my drawer. Mess. I was kind of annoyed. Not a huge fan of the bottles. Okay, so that's much lighter. Could be dealing with flex pen ink gushing, causing ink to be dark situation here. The rose gold is pretty as a contrast. It's very green gray, actually. Quite green. So that'll be interesting to see what it looks like when it dries. This set is 2 pocket pens that are holding ink that I didn't remember the color of correctly. I don't know if you've noticed, I have these little pieces of washi tape on most of my samples. And this is a shorthand way of reminding me when I'm going through my samples of what type of pen I've already tried. So this blue piece of tape means that I have tried it in a flex pen already, and I would like to try it in an Architect or a Broad. If you see a purple piece of tape like this sample, that is something that I've tried in a Broad or an Architect, but want to try in a flex. That's the most common one because I have a set of pens. They're all Architects. So every new sample set that I get in, I ink all of these pens. Oh, I'll just show you some of them now. They're just little Jinhaos. These 7 Jinhaos are my ink testing pens. So they all have Architects in them. And they are what I use when I order samples. So I can have it in a pen for a while and try it. Because I try all my samples in an Architect right from the get-go, all of them almost need to go into a flex after that. So the first pen is this Kaweco Sport Black. It has a double broad nib on it, and it has a shimmer ink in it. So I'll start doing this. The shimmer ink that it has is Troublemaker Autumn Rain Gray, which I thought was appropriate given the word autumn. This is a murky, darker green with a light sage green shimmer in it, and a little bit of blue too, it looks like. A murky green with some shading, especially in this double broad with a fine lighter green shimmer. I like this. I forgot that it had that much green in it. That's where I forgot what the ink looked like comes in. For some reason, I thought it was more gray than it is. And I didn't remember it being quite this dark, but it is a pretty color. I don't get autumn from it as much though, but that might be a me thing. And the Troublemaker shimmers are pretty shimmery. They are not these subtle type shimmers, so they can also get very messy. What's life if you don't get a little glitter around places? Just gotta own the glitter, right? Especially around the holidays. We all have those people that send us glitter cards, right? And it just contaminates our kitchen for a week. It's quite pretty. Very shimmery though. Very, very, very shimmery. And that green is so light that it really does come across almost as silver in the letters. If you're looking for a dark murky green with silver glitter, this is the way to go. Next pen is my Gravitas Pocket Stainless Steel pen. This has a Architect nib on it. I do quite like writing with this pen now that I have an Architect. It's very balanced. The build quality is quite nice. It's a little heavy, but that's okay. And in this pen, I have Platinum Classic Citrus Black. This is an Iron Gall ink. Iron Gall inks are fun to watch, so watch this one as I write and what happens as I keep writing. That's an Iron Gall ink for you. It starts out quite light, and then as it oxidizes and dries, it gets darker in a lot of places, but it still retains a lot of shading and character. I really like Iron Gall inks a lot. And in particular, the ones from this Platinum Classic line are really great. Though I will say that the Citrus Black is my least favorite of those because the original writing with it is quite light. And when I am writing with a pen that is writing that light, I tend to want to press harder. And when it does the change from the Iron Gall, it goes more green. They are pretty expensive though, in the grand scheme of inks. Let's watch the color change again. See, that's the color when you very first write with it. It's sort of to me, kind of an unpleasant yellow too. It's, I'm not going to say what it reminds me of. I always find Iron Gall inks fascinating because as they change over time, I don't understand exactly why they don't do this just in the bottle. So if any of you brilliant ink people out there know, let me know in the comments. I can look it up too. But why does it not change? Is it something in the paper that makes it change? Like the acidity or the bleach in the paper? Does that make it change? What makes it change? And so would it change more on different paper? In any case, I think that they're really cool. I love Iron Gall inks. Moving along, we have our next set of 2 colors. I'm going to call this set, Let's Put Real Dark Ink in 2 of our favorite pens to write with so we don't feel like writing with them much this month. Anyway, the first pen I'll talk about is this Hongdian N23 Rabbit with a long knife nib on it, which is like an Architect. This is one of my favorite pens. I really enjoy writing with this pen. It's one of the first Architect type nibs that I had. And in this pen, I have Troublemaker, Lam-ang, probably not pronouncing that right, which is nowhere near the color that is indicated on the top. Cobalt blue, purplish cobalt blue. I didn't realize that the color that was in the bottle did not match the top anymore. So I was actually looking for more of a burgundy and was rather surprised when I put it in the pen and ended up with a extremely saturated cobalt blue. There's no shading in here at all. It looks like there's a bit of a sheen. Guess we'll see more in the larger swatch. And the color is quite dark. So it's not one of my favorites. So dark that it's definitely not black, but it is sort of flat, which is great if you're interested in highly saturated inks. To me, there's a balance. I want saturation. I don't want it to be washed out looking, but I want it to still not be flat. Some people that would call this a purple. It's kind of right on the cusp of Is it purple? Is it blue? I would think of it as a cobalt blue with a healthy dose of purple in it. This is another one of my favorite pens to write with. This is a PenBBS 495. It is a piston fill pen. I really like the color. I like how the red and the purple color itself of this pen I really enjoy. And I had ordered it in, I think, a fine nib. But when I ordered this pen, I also ordered their calligraphy number 2 nib, and that's what's in here right now. It is also an Architect style, but it comes to more of a point than some of the other Architects I have. So it's the variation to me is a little wider. And in this pen, I have, I'm going to call this used up. There's barely any in there. It'd be hard to fill a pen. Ferris wheel press, Aurorealis 2024 limited edition. This is also a dark purple, but this one is a shimmer. The shimmer that's in there looks like it's a copper color. That one's got a little bit more going on. It's not quite as saturated as the other one. It's more of a dusty purple, dark purple, so it does read not very bright. The shimmer that's in there is pretty, and I can see it already before it's even dried. So Ferris wheel press inks, their shimmers tend to not play around and be quite shimmery. So I'm assuming when we do the swatch, it's going to be one of those messy shimmers. But I like the contrast between the copper, which is sort of an orange, and that dusty purple. It's a pretty combination. Yeah, so that's a darker purple in the shimmer. I don't know how I feel about it right now. I could see this one growing on me and coming to really like it, or I could see it being boring and not reaching for it. Starting to realize that I have a lot of Colorverse inks this month. I'm not sure how that happened, but this set I'm going to call, wow, these are some dark blues, but they have some cool stuff going on. And I will start out with my Magna Carta Mag 650 pen. This is a 14 karat gold flex pen that I've had for about maybe a month and a half, 2 months now. It is one of my favorite pens. I love the flex on this pen, and I have had such good experiences with every ink I've put into this pen. I'm kind of trying to throw things at it that may not work as well, just to see how far I can push it. And when I think of inks that don't always work the best for me, I guess I think of Colorverse. And in this pen, I have put Colorverse Bow Shock, which is a sheening dark blue. So this is putting out a lot of ink, and it is going to be hard for you to see the sheening until it dries. You can probably start to see it in there. It is a fairly heavy sheener. You can see as it's drying in the thinner areas that the sheen is pretty significant on that one. And I like the color, but I like all of these colors. There are quite a few of these dark blue with red or pink sheeners out there. Fuller Glow is one for sure. And then this Diamine Majestic Blue is another dark blue with pink sheen. And I think the DC Super Show Blue that I have from Private Reserve, this isn't a good sample, but it has some of that, not as heavy as these other ones do. And then the Colorverse Bow Shock, it just falls right in that category. And I know that there's more because I've seen them. It's just been done, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And that's not to say it's a bad color, because it's clearly pretty and popular because so many companies have made their own version of it. But it does mean that I'm not excited about it like I would be something a little bit more unique. There's subtle differences between all of them. They're not all exact copies of each other, but honestly, this is low enough that that's probably gone too. I don't know how I would even get that little bit in a pen. And the other blue with something fun going on is one of the bottles that I got from my family for my birthday last month. This is Diamine Happy Holidays, which is also a dark blue. It's a rich blue. It is also a sheener, and it has shimmer. So this is one of the few inks that I have right now that are both a shimmer and a sheen. And I believe that the sheen on this is reddish, kind of like the one I just did, but it also has this brighter blue shimmer. It's an ink that's got a lot going on, and it's Diamine. I have pretty good experiences with Diamine inks. This was one of the advent calendar inks from, I think it was I don't know, this was like one of the first advent calendars. I think this one was in, maybe the first one. Anyway, it is in this Jaipur version 2 pen, and I'm going to just wiggle it around a little bit for the shimmer. So this is 4 rather dark inks in a row. It is reading as almost black here right now. I like Diamine a lot. I have a really good variety, had pretty consistent results from their ink. I think their advent calendar is a good price and usually fairly extensive. I'm on the fence about getting an advent calendar. I want one, but I don't want to do a video every day because I am real bad at daily commitments like that. And I end up feeling terrible when I can't meet them. But I've always liked advent calendars, even before they got incredibly popular for every single aspect of life. You can probably see some of the red sheen come through, and the glitter that's in there against that dark purplish blue almost reads slightly green, which gives this red-green aspect, holiday feeling to it. It's a very cool ink. Any of those shimmer and sheeners to me are fun because they just have so much going on in them. Last 2 pens, and this group I'm calling green, blue, blue, green, green, blue. I don't know, maybe all of them, both of them. Also not fall colors. In my Kaweco All Sport with a double broad nib in it, I have Birmingham Pen Company's Aqueduct. I had tried this in a flex pen. I wanted to try it in a Architect or a broad to see how the color looked. So that's why it ended up in this one. Quite a lot of shading in that ink, which I love. I believe, from what I remember, that I enjoy this, at least so far, before it's dried, in a broad more than in a flex pen. It is reading a little bit more blue-green than green. I remember it being a little more green in the flex pen I tried it in before. I definitely don't remember that much shading in it. I do like it in there quite a bit. So this is the green blue of the 2 inks that I've paired up. Definitely blue in there, but I would say that leans more green than blue. The other ink that I have in this Wancai pocket pen with an Architect nib, I just have the smallest amount of it left. So this is not going to last in there very long. Let me actually put it like that for a minute. Is this Kuretake Meiji no Iro Shimbashi-Iro. This is a blue-green, and it is one of the prettiest colors I've ever put into this narwhal It behaved so well in this pen, this fussy pen. And the color is gorgeous in that pen. And I am limiting the bottles that I buy, but this is most likely going to be purchased as a bottle. I'm very sad that I'm out of it. And when I'm that sad that I'm out of a color, that tells me I should look into getting a bottle. As long as I have the space and it's not prohibitively expensive. And this one isn't terrible. It's not very easy to find. There are not many places that I found online, at least United States people that have that. Sure, you could tell it's quite dry. This is basically on its last legs for ink. Unfortunately, it's pretty sad, but I did want to show you guys the color. This is what this ink looks like in this pen. The Shimbashi. And it is beautiful. And not only is it beautiful, like I said, this pen is fussy. It did write very well. I love this ink in there. So this is why I'm leaning towards getting a bottle much more than the way that it was writing in that Wancai. Very pretty. Might have to improvise here and do a Q-tip. If I can even get enough from a Q-tip. Not great. Not the best representation of this ink. Brush probably would have been better. Maybe some darker spots in the brush. I mean, when I say I use this up, I am scraping the bottom of the barrel just to make this. And that is, hey, wait, there's some in the cap. Sad. It's a sad situation here. Whoop. That gives you the idea. Just look at this and then imagine it about 97 times more pretty because it's not almost out of ink. So that's a great way to end the pens for this month. All right, so I'm going to do a very brief overview because I want to save most of my thoughts for my next review that will be coming up in November. I'm going to save most of my more in-depth thoughts for that. So this is going to be brief, but these are all the inks for this month. It's 21 pens. These 3 are left over from last month. And I just kept them out of the rotation for now. They're just to the side. So this right here is all of the new ink. And I have it roughly in my guess as to how much I will enjoy using any of these particular inks. Just generally speaking, these very heavy shimmer inks are more near the bottom because I don't really like the shimmer that really gets everywhere. This ink feels very flat to me in this pen. This is quite high because it is a shimmer and a sheener. And I think that the haloing that happens with this ink and the sheen in the middle, it's really, really interesting. And it's not too messy, but it's a little messy too. It kind of goes from my favorite down to the ones I'm less excited about. All 3 of these I'm interested in getting a bottle for. This one definitely for sure. This one I'll write with it for the month and see because I don't know, it's just doing some pretty interesting things and I like this color. And this one because it is fairly water resistant and I do like the shading. So these 3 are bottle contenders. And this one would be too, except this is one of the colors that comes in a set of 2 with the bigger bottle and the smaller bottle. And this color is one that's in the smaller bottle. And I don't think you can get it separately. And I don't want the whole bottle of ink that it comes with just for a small bottle of this. I am very excited about this section here. This one might grow on me too. I don't know. We'll have to see. So that about covers it. Those are my currently inked pens for October and November. I am excited about some of the inks. There's some really good ones in there, and I'm less excited about some of them. We'll see. We'll see how they work out. And you can look for a review of all those inks in my re-inking video that I'll put up at the end of November. I really appreciate you stopping by and sticking around till the end. I hope you have a great week, and I'll see you again next time. Bye. The next pen. No, Gravitas, why did you roll over that and smear it? So many technical difficulties this month. What is going on?